You guys, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My wonderful and lovely producer today, Melinda, is going to start this recording. And welcome to Visual Supports. Just one of the projects in the Human Development Center. And for more information about our services and programs, or to contact the Human Development Center, please visit our website, which is listed here, or by scanning this QR code. The Human Development Center is Louisiana's only UCED, or University Center of Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. And the Human Development Center offers programs to support people from birth throughout their educational careers and adult lives. LASARD is a K-12 initiative, and our interdisciplinary team consistently works together to find innovative ways to help districts, teachers, and students grow. Our team's made up of special educators, occupational therapists, educational therapists, BCBAs, school psychologists, school administrators, speech language pathologists, early interventionists, and a licensed professional counselor. So today what you're going to do is we're going to learn why visual supports are important for everyone. We're going to understand how to plan and implement those visual supports, and we're going to explore different visual supports and how they can support students. So the big idea is that visual supports are the best way to convey meaningful information, and we all depend on them to independently function in the real world. So today, as we go through, we're going to do 30 visual supports in 30 minutes. So we use them for traffic flow, knowing what is in the cans or items at the grocery store, when to stop or go. Can you imagine what driving would be like without visual supports? They tell us where and when to cross streets, when stores are opened and closed. They save spots for people who need close access, which bathroom is which. The point is that we all use visual supports every day, all day long, to make decisions without even realizing it. And we can also choose to use certain visuals in our everyday lives to help us remember things. They help us keep appointments, and they give us directions. How many of you would be lost without your phones and Google Maps? I don't know about you, but I would be lost all day, every day. So what are visual supports? Visual supports are any materials that illustrate important information, facilitate transitions, convey expectations, provide understanding and predictability. And when you see these green circles with numbers, each of these are visual supports templates that are free downloads and can be found on our website under online resources. So let's get started. We're first going to explore why we use visual supports with students and what we should consider when we're considering using those supports. Do you hear yourself saying these things? We do this every day. My students just don't listen to a word I say. I've told them how to do that at least 3 times. I don't have students that need visual supports in my classroom. No, she hears me. She's just being lazy. She can do that. Visual supports make your life easier and your students' lives easier. Visual supports are the best way to convey information in a meaningful way, and visual supports can do many things. They can illustrate critical information. They can convey behavior expectations. They're utilized to provide understanding. They can support organization and predictability. They can prime and structure activities such as daily routines and transitions. Visual supports can be used in a variety of ways and for different purposes. And once the learner is taught to use and reference the visual support, they automatically gain a greater level of independence, which is the goal. So how do you do it? What are your considerations? Visual supports are designed with a specific purpose, and they should be individualized to meet the needs of your students. Here are some things to consider before you get started. The form of presentation, the format, durability and portability, clarity, age appropriateness, special interests, and response effort. We're going to discuss each of these. Will the student need objects, photographs, icons, or words on the visual support in order to understand and attend to the visual? What will work best? For example, learning to recognize the boundary of stop or wait. It could be a word, a picture of a stop sign, or a picture of a gesture. If you're not sure of the best form of presentation, you can enlist the help and support of your team, including the parent. Your speech pathologist will also likely be a great source of information here. You should also consider the format of the visual support. If you're creating a schedule, will it be vertical on the wall? Will it be posted in the student's binder? Are you going to have all the activities of the day on the schedule, or just the morning? Or just the first two activities? Will the student use this support on their computer? How large should you make the visual? Next, consider durability and portability. How durable will the support need to be? Can it be laminated on cardstock, or will the support need to be mounted on a hard surface that cannot be destroyed? Will the visual be posted and stationary, or will it need to be portable and move with the student from setting to setting? For many students, starting with a simple format and using materials that are durable and easy to transport or carry, such as a clipboard or a lanyard with a small array of laminated visuals, those may be the easiest to use and also to recreate if they're lost or damaged. The next consideration is clarity. If you're using photographs, are the photos clear? And is what you want the individual to attend to the only concept represented in the photo? Do you need a background color to help the individual attend to the objects or pictures? Be sure to consider what the student's peers are using. Sometimes the tendency is to use pictures or formats that would be appropriate for younger students. But if other 8th graders are looking at an agenda book, you want to be sure to create the visual support to fit inside an agenda book. If other students are using their computers, help the student learn how to access the visual support on their computer. Instead of creating something new, you can spend the time to model for the independent how to use the apps that are already on their computer, that all the students in their grade are already using, such as the calendar, task lists, timers, all of those. It's important to consider the social validity of the visual support. Is this something that would be okay with a student without a disability? To individualize and create a real interest in the support, you will want to consider incorporating the student's special interests into your design. Often identifying and incorporating relatively simple items that are highly appealing to the student can help facilitate focus and task completion. If a student's into Paw Patrol, you can incorporate that into the support. For example, the student could earn Paw Patrol stickers on their token board, and upon earning 3 stickers, he gets his desired reward. If a student is into Sonic, let the power card be about Sonic completing his work. If you don't know the student's special interest, you want to enlist the help of your team, especially family members. Remember to also consider age appropriateness. If a student's 15, you would not use Paw Patrol stickers and coloring pages. Find a special interest that is shared with those same age peers. You also need to consider how the student will manipulate the visual support. Is this something that will be posted on the wall in the classroom and the student will walk up to move a picture from the left to the finished side on the right, or put the finished activity into a pocket or a basket on the teacher's desk? Or is this visual schedule kept in the student's binder and he will mark through activities with a dry erase marker as they're completed? Where will the dry erase marker be kept? Walk through the logistics because you'll need to teach this to the student. Now that you've answered all these questions, you're ready to create or decide which visual support to use and try it with your students. Let's look at some examples. Visual boundaries. Think about the first day of school with new students. How do they know where to walk? What does that lunchroom look like during lunchtime? Without visual boundaries telling students what path to follow, where they can enter and exit the lines, where they can sit, which door goes to where, it's a giant mass of a mess. Here's some more examples of visual boundaries. Using tape to mark off sections of a table for a workspace. Using tape to define where a student can sit. At home, this is a great visual support for dinner time to remind children where they should keep themselves and their food and utensils, and to not grab food or utensils from anyone else. Next up are visual schedules. A visual schedule is a tool that provides a child with information about the sequence of events to occur. When determining what kind of visual schedule to use, you want to think about class school schedule versus individual schedule versus activity schedule. They answer things that we all want to know, like what's next? Are there any changes? How long is math class? When do I get a break? These can be for your entire class, and whether it's a full day or part of a day, all students can easily look and see what's coming next and how long it will last. What is important to remember with these class-wide schedules is that you follow them. If there's a change in times or events, it should be shown in the class schedule. It can be frustrating for your students and you if they ask you 20,000 times, when is lunch? Or when is the class over, when the schedule they have access to is incorrect. Notice that picture on the right. Who can read that? It doesn't count as a visual schedule if nobody can read it unless they have a magnifying glass. Let's look at visual supports 2 and 3. Think about these students in your classrooms. Who may need more than a class-wide schedule to stay on task and transition seamlessly? Who in the class has difficulty with these changes? Who's constantly out of their desk or off task during an activity? These students may require schedules that are more individualized. For some students, we may need to include more choices or options for participation to promote engagement in an activity. Notice the one on the right is portable, so the student can take it with them to the carpet, to different tables, to their specials. Anywhere the student goes, this schedule can go with them on this versatile mat with a handle. Other students may require specific academic or behavior accommodations. For these students, the special and general educators need to collaborate in the preparation of individualized visual supports that are needed to promote engagement and learning for the student. Sometimes schedules need to be broken down into even simpler visual schedules. These individual supports are called first-then schedules and activity schedules. Let's look at those formats. Friendly reminder, number 2, number 3, every time you see a green number, those are free download templates and examples on our website. First-then schedules are the simplest of schedules and may be a precursor for a student to understand and use more complicated schedules. Simply put, it just presents what we need to do now, the first part, and what we will do next, the then part. Usually the first is a non or less preferred activity, followed by the then, which is a highly preferred activity. This strategy, also known as the PREMAC principle, serves to increase motivation to complete a less preferred activity because they can see that a highly preferred task or activity will follow. First example shows first clean up, then snack. Second example shows first use the bathroom, then play the student's preferred game. The third example is for home use. First get dressed, then break time. First-then schedules can also be utilized as a visual support for priming. If a student has difficulty leaving a preferred activity, like iPad time, a first-then schedule with a timer can be utilized to make the transition smoother for the student. First-then schedules are the simplest type and may be a precursor for a student to understand and use more complicated schedules, such as the first, next, then schedule, which shows 3 activities. You can pair them with timers, like the example on the right, which answers the question, how long? Pairing pictures with words is also helpful for your beginning readers or struggling readers. The more they see the words in print, the better. Activity schedules break down the task into steps, help students pace themselves, promote independence, and lets them know there's an end in sight. Here's a printed one for a younger student who maybe has some reservations about going into school, and an easy on the fly one for a high school student in math class. That one's on a sticky note. Do you have a safe place for your students? an activity schedule for what to do when students go to their safe place when they're anxious, overwhelmed, or need to calm down. By proactively showing the students exactly what they are expected to do while in the safe place, you can really cut down on issues like how long can they stay? What can they do while they're there? Activity schedules and to-do lists can also be created with most technology programs that are utilized in schools today. For families, these are from my own house. I developed these last year when my son Finn was 10. The morning schedule came out because I leave for work a lot of mornings before my husband and son, and they were having very stressful mornings. My husband was getting frustrated at having to say 100 times each step Finn needed to complete to get completely out the door ready for school. And my son was getting frustrated because he was doing step one, like brush his teeth, then sitting down to play Roblox instead of moving on to the next step to getting completely ready for school. So, with about 10 minutes left every morning, Dylan and Finn were in this crazy flurry to get out the door in 10 minutes with multiple things still left to do. Backpacks got forgotten, teeth sometimes weren't brushed. I think they even forgot shoes one morning. It was a mess. But this checklist, or activity schedule, if you want to use fancy terms, has helped them both have much easier mornings. He even tries to finish his list early so he can see how fast he can show dad he's out the door ready. The afternoon checklist came about for the same reasons. I got really tired of saying the same things over and over. And our lives are much, much easier because he isn't hearing me nag him. If you're reading these two lists and you're like, what's the deal with Elsa having to pee? Elsa is our dog, and Finn is responsible for making sure she gets out to do her business. Long-term schedules. Weekly or monthly schedules can be very helpful for students as they get older. We utilize these every day with our own calendars, and for families, a family calendar in everyone's phone that is linked can help everyone know what is happening before they make plans or ask you what's going on for the weekend, especially for your older children. We utilize a family calendar in our iPhones that are linked to both parents and all children so everyone knows what's happening. Doctor's appointments, dental appointments, work schedules, vacations, spend the nights, parties, all the things. We briefly mentioned transitions earlier. A transition, for a definition, is any change within an activity, from one activity to another, from one environment to another, or unexpected events. Transitions require you to stop an activity, begin something new, and move from one location to another. We often take for granted that that is something easily done. A low-tech countdown timer. A time and systems are great visual supports to help students know when activities occur and assist students in pacing themselves through activities. We all like to know when things will occur and how long they'll last. The routine use of timers can improve a student's independence as well as skills in planning, organization, and time management. For some students with an individual schedule, the transition cue may be paired with their schedule to provide predictability of the next activity. For example, if the timer has 1 minute left, the adult should reference the schedule to show the student the activity that will occur when the timer is done. Technology is fantastic for doing this on their individual computers. Minute timer visuals. These are things that the adult or the student can count down by moving a clip or marking with a dry erase marker, and a good old-fashioned timer that can be put on the board for all students to see, or on an individual computer who needs a visual support to complete a task in a specified amount of time. For families, there's apps like these that reveal pictures on your phone as the timer nears completion of whatever amount of time you designate. There are so many ways for individuals to communicate. That's a whole nother training, or like 10. So let's focus for a minute on visual supports that can help our students communicate. These are cards that students can utilize to cue adults at their needs and wants. Conveniently for you, we have these resources as free downloads on our websites. A feelings communication board for a student to communicate their feelings upon entry into your classroom, or maybe just when they need to communicate some feelings that are hard to verbalize. Notice the additional face emojis on the left. By pairing a picture with the abstract feeling, you're giving them a way to make the abstract concept more concrete. For families, these communication boards can be a proactive way for siblings to communicate their feelings, even with adult help, and work out their differences. I wish I had known about these when my children were younger, because they probably could have spent a lot less time fighting and, as a reactive consequence, spending time in that get along shirt. Communication boards. These are examples that are specific to centers. And if you notice, there's a basic version with the same core vocabulary for both centers and an advanced version with the fringe vocabulary. All students can benefit from using these visual supports since they have core and fringe vocabulary. You want to up your students' vocabulary? Utilize some communication boards in your centers. Communication strips. These communication strips are varied in complexity. By utilizing these strips, your students can learn appropriate phrases and eventually sentences to communicate with their peers and adults. Notice I use the word peers first. Communication starter cards, like the snack chat and the lunch chat, can help your students know what to talk about during social events. Those are automatically built-in social skills lessons. Learning participation boards. These visual supports can be utilized to support students who are learning new material, either struggling to master material or not masters of the verbal communication yet. By having a visual representation of the concept, the student can master the abstract. If the student hasn't mastered verbal communication yet, they can show you their mastery of these skills by pointing, which brings us to another section of visual supports for all students. These will overlap with communication a little bit. Behavior visual supports. A reward chart or a token economy. Remember the the Paw Patrol and the Sonic charts from earlier? Incorporating pictures of their interests can go a long way in creating buy-in for this strategy. Here's another friendly PSA. Reinforce them with something they want. Ask the student, if Sally doesn't really care for stickers, she isn't going to do something she doesn't want to do for a sticker. And 99% of the time, if a reward chart isn't working, the student either doesn't want the reward or you aren't reinforcing them enough. Nobody can see the light at the end of the tunnel if they have to earn 18 tokens to earn a reward. There isn't anything that good for a student that teachers can afford. So remember, reward often and let them choose it. Whole class reward charts. These are on our website and great to help students earn pieces of a puzzle to earn the picture. For example, you can use them whole class if they're into animals, or if you want to do a specific activity that they like. You can give a piece of the puzzle every time a student either answers you correctly or the whole class or a small group are showing you exactly what you are expecting behaviorally or from work. And then once they earn all the pieces, they put the puzzle together and get to do the activity. Calming strategies. These are fantastic for whole groups. Calming down individuals, students, and all the things. Providing visual supports for how to calm down and focus is something that a lot of adults can use as well. So you can always be a superstar for your school by putting these in your teacher's lounge, faculty restroom, or just plain by the door or in the hallway. The change alert. And this brings us to visual support number 30. Priming is exposure or information to activities that an individual has ahead of time. This is especially important if it's something that an individual is likely to have difficulty with, like a field trip or a new lesson. By letting that student know in advance, when possible, if something is changing or will be different than the norm, this visual support helps the student prepare for the change, expect the change, and the change goes smoother. Again, life is easier for everyone. Let's think about a few more things to consider when implementing visual supports. How are you going to teach the support you created? You've got to determine prompting level your student will need to begin the teaching process. Will they be able to utilize the visual support with verbal prompts? Will they need gestural prompts that involve pointing to the visual as a reminder? Or will they need to be physically prompted to move through the steps or tasks depicted in the visual? Teach and instruct in close proximity. It is usually best to stand behind the student and prompt or cue from behind so that they can visually focus on the support and not on you. You want to use short verbal cues. Check schedule. Next step, please. Transition time. What's next? Provide access to visuals consistently. Visuals should not be kept in the drawer, but visible and available in the settings where they're needed. Provide reinforcement. Provide immediate reinforcement when the student uses the visual. Accompany the reinforcement with labeled praise, such as, "You moved the activity picture on your schedule," or whatever reinforcement you have set up to motivate the student to follow the visual support. Once you've created the visual and determined your teaching procedures, you need to determine data collection methods to see if the visual support is working. Set up your data collection methods from the very beginning. You'll then have a baseline of what the student was able to do when you began in order to be able to measure progress. How will the data be collected? Paper sheet, computer, when and how often, and by who? Data collection's easier when it's built into your schedule. Figure out who will be collecting data and how often it's going to happen. Write it into your schedule and stick with the schedule. Align your data collection methods with your progress monitoring. If collecting data on paper, have adequate copies in the designated locations where support will be used. If using Google Forms or technology, have it available and make sure everyone collecting data knows how and when to input the data. Data collection is a team effort. Everyone needs to be on the same page and understand when, how, and what is being collected. Clear expectations is key to a successful team. When will you meet to evaluate data collection and make adjustments if necessary? It is very rare for something to be perfect the first time. Progress indicators could be that student needs fewer prompts to use the support, or that needed prompts go from more to less intrusive. For example, from physical to verbal, to fading the prompting altogether. Another progress indicator might be that the student is able to use a more sophisticated schedule independently. For example, they move from a picture schedule to a word schedule, or that the student has generalized the use of support in additional settings. Remember, the goal is for the student to utilize the visual support independently when they need it, just like we all use visual supports every single day when we need them. In summary, when designing visual supports, remember these general rules. Make them simple. Make them student-centered. Use what you think the student will be able to understand quickly and easily and is comparable to what typical peers would use. Create supports that can be clearly understood by everyone in the environment. Remember that you have to teach and model for your student how the visual support you created will be used. Make sure the visual supports you create are available in all of the settings where they're needed. And have a fading plan. Plan to fade that prompting to use the visual support with independence. When making visual supports, here's some don'ts. Don't spend a great deal of time creating complicated supports or being overly concerned about the aesthetics. Simple is better. We've shown you examples of supports that were words or drawings using a small dry erase board. Make something easy to understand and something that will be easy to modify if you need to. Don't create a bunch of rules about what a visual should look like. It doesn't have to be pretty to be effective. One size does not fit all. Visual supports need to be individualized supports, so they should meet the student's unique needs. Visual supports need to be readily available in all settings and with the student during all the times they need to use it. And especially for individualized visual supports, the more people know about using the support, the more it will be used and the easier everyone's life will be. This is even more true for older students. For example, if a sticky note with a task list helps a student in biology, it probably would really help them in all of their classes. If you have any questions about what we talked about today, you can email us at lasard@lsuhsc.edu.